What's up, YouTube? Dead here, bringing on the video today. Today, we're going to be going over the format and what's kind of it's going to turn out to be. This is largely based on the YCS 200. I took all three results from all three YCS 200s and kind of developed a tier list, a type of thing. Remember, guys, don't take this to heart. There's going to be decks that didn't make the list in tier 3. And decks that I think that actually can compete, but just aren't on here. And this is pretty much just going off deck breakdowns. I think there's a lot that's subject to change as the format grows, as we get new cards and just all that kind of stuff. Especially when Soul Fusion releases, there's going to be a lot of change to the format. But this is kind of what you need to expect going to a few regionals, or I guess YCSs, with this format. I don't think there's any more YCSs before Soul Fusion. There might be one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Niagara is before or after. But yeah, we'll kind of get into this. And this time I did kind of order them on what I think's best. But yeah, first off, we're going to start with Sky Striker. This deck did absolutely insane this weekend. A lot of people kind of assumed it since they just got tapped on the wrist by Hornet Drone going to 1, and that's all that really affected them. And it just absolutely dominated. It was actually 95 Sky Strikers that topped all three different events. So topping is top 64. There was 95 Trickstars in top 64 between the three events. 27 in North America, I think 33 in Mexico, and it was 35 in Europe. So it's actually insane of how well this deck was did, and it actually ended up winning EU. I think it won all the. I think it actually won every single YCS. I'm not sure about Mexico who won that one, but I know both North America and Europe, Sky Striker won. That's absolutely insane. This deck is just going to be dominating for most of this format, even after we get new set release. And we won't really see this deck die down until we get a new ban list, honestly. Next, going up here is Goki. Goki. Yes, it made this list. It's absolutely insane how well this deck is. If you guys watched North America YCS 200 finals, you'll see that it made it all the way to the finals, getting second place. And you know, it's just absolutely insane. So between this number is going to seem a lot lower, but between the three regions, there was 27 Goki decks in top 64, which is actually insane, seeing as it was kind of the focused hit on of the ban list. But obviously hitting Goblin just didn't do enough, and it's just not hit enough. It's absolutely still powerful. This is one thing that we actually may see as the format kind of goes out. As the format moves on, we might see more players go to Gokis, so we could see Goki just become better than Sky Striker. It's a possibility because I know a lot of people were probably thrown off and didn't really want to play this deck as much since it got hit. And so I think people are going to refine it even more, and it's just going to get better and better, and people are going to just realize that. Second thing to note about this deck is it actually, so out of the 27 that topped, there was actually 8 in the EU, which is absolutely insane because like Summon Sorceress is not a card there. So I'm not I'm not really sure, but they still combo off. I think the only way to really hurt this deck or to get rid of this deck is to get rid of Firewall, or just absolutely body their archetype. I don't know if that's really fair though. And okay, so the last one on the list here is Altergeist, and the thing with this deck is like it could be it could be like one of the better decks in the format. We can count this as tier 1 or tier 2. It's really hard to say with the next deck. We'll talk about that, but this deck is actually pretty strong. We see 16 Altergeists within the top 64 of the 3 different regions, which is pretty good. The deck did well. I think this deck has inherent flaws to it where it's hard to gain advantage and keep advantage. So the only cards you really rely on are your draws, and it's hard. And I think that's one of the reasons it didn't top more than it did. A lot of people were expecting it to be a large Sky Striker Altergeist, like in between matches, but it just ended up not being that way. And I just think the deck has inherent flaws itself. And I don't think the North American players or just the TCG players in general kind of saw or have the build refined enough like the OCG players did. So that's just what I have to say about that. But 16 in top 64 between three different regions isn't too bad. Um, then we're going to talk about tier 2. We're going to go down to Trickstar, and this one's like where it's kind of going to vary here. And this one is like I said, this could have kind of been in tier 1, but I chose to put it in tier 2 right now. And it did get 16 overall tops within the top 64 of the different three regions. But the thing is, it's running different variants. So that included Sky Striker Trickstars and Trickstars in one, and I'm just kind of including all the variants in this. Now I think this deck is one of the ones that people really didn't expect it to be like not as powerful as it is, because it never got touched on the ban list. It was just absolutely like ignored on the ban list, or for the most part. But the thing is, I think the consistency with Terraforming going to 1 and Scapegoat going to 2, it lost a lot of its power plays and a little bit of its consistency. I think that was enough to hurt the deck to be not as powerful as it once was. Plus, with the Sky Striker engine nerfed a bit with the Hornet Drone going to 1, it was definitely the better variant of the Trickstars deck. So it's just not as powerful as it once was, and it's prone to a lot of things, and honestly has a kind of a bad matchup against a lot of decks this format. So that's kind of where Trickstar's sitting. Next thing to talk about here is True Draco, and there was like 4 in the North America. I didn't go into every event. I'm sure there was like 4 or 5 in each one, so a decent amount of True Draco. Yeah, there's about, I think there's like 14 True Dracos that topped overall. This deck is very powerful. I think if Masterpiece was at 1 still, this deck would still probably be one of the best decks. But it's just it doesn't do enough. It gains a lot of advantage, but it really relies heavy on its draw cards. And I think a lot of decks just are able to out advantage it. So that's kind of where it goes. I think it doesn't have a great matchup against Sky Striker. I think that's one of the big problems, is since the traps hit all the link monsters most of the time, they can bring out Ray and just keep going off. I think that's one of the big issues with the deck. So I think this deck's really powerful, but it's a little bit reliant on floodgates. And you know, it's not, you don't have the best, most technical players playing the deck, just because it's mostly just flip a floodgate and win. I'm sorry if you're a True Draco player, and that's you have a different opinion. Yes, I know there's lots of different interactions that you have to do in the orders of your spell cards and what you choose to do, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's just playing advantage and playing floodgates. I do think this deck is very strong though, and you could top many regionals with it. Yeah. Next thing to talk about is Invoked mekk-knight. Now this one's kind of interesting. I debated on putting it down in tier 3, but we're gonna have it up here in tier 2. I think this deck's very powerful. I think it lost a little bit of consistency with Terraformer going to 1 and Endscape going to 2. Cards they both play. Though you can argue that you only play 2 Terraforming, sure. But with Sky Striker getting hit, Hornet Drone's going to 1, and that engine being hit, I feel like this deck lost a lot of its power and its consistency because the Sky Striker engine was in it so good, because it helped you make Alistair the Link Monster a lot easier, and I think that hurt the deck just enough not to be the best deck. I think it could have been like really high contender if the Sky Striker engine didn't get hit to be the best deck, but just the loss in consistency makes it not as good, and you know, that's just kind of how it goes. One thing to note, there was this deck did top a few tops in Mexico City and in Europe, but this actually had no tops in top 64 in North America. And I think it just wasn't played as much, it wasn't represented as much, but it just isn't as powerful as it could be. All right, moving on to tier 3. Now, there is a billion decks that could be in tier 3. I'm gonna, at the end of me talking about the tier 3, I'm going to shout them out, or shout out a few of them. But right now, we're kind of just going to talk about these three. And right now, I'm going to put BA here in tier three. And a lot of people may argue and say this is more suitable to be in tier two. Remember, tier three and tier two are really close, but I think BA is not as good. You may be able to play Danger BA. Interesting enough, I don't think we really seen any Danger stuff do anything this weekend. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, sorry. But BA is very powerful. But the problem is, I think it has a not so good Sky Striker matchup. So I feel like you're just like in the Sky Striker matchup, you're just able to out advantage your opponent. Farfa is not as useful as it could be in a lot of the time, since it just banishing the Link monster in Sky Striker triggers Ray because it leaves the field. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I do think that this deck is strong, but I think it's just not as strong as it could be. Especially with Guys running around, Goku running around, and Sky Trigger, it just makes it hard. Especially in you also don't want to play the matchup against True Draco either. I don't think it's very good against VA. Is very good. So I think the matchups just lead to this deck not being as powerful as it could be. But I think it's definitely something you should watch out for and maybe side for a little bit. Especially if you're going to regionals and whatnot. This other one to talk about now is more of a shout out than anything because I just think it's funny. We see this deck just kind of sticks around, and it's Paleo Frog. And the thing about Paleo Frog is like it's just it comes back and forth, and nothing really happens to it. It does okay. It like I think there was like a couple Paleo that topped at like every YCS here, and it just like overall it was just like whatever. I actually know Paleo topped the YCS in North America, but I believe there was one in Europe and one in there. This deck's kind of interesting. You can play it. It's one of those another ones that rely on floodgates and traps. I don't think it's the most consistent, but it's just there. This tier three is really not in any particular order. Um, but yeah, Paleo's there. It's an option, guys. If you want to play it, I think you could do really well with it at a regional. I don't think at a YCS level it's ever going to win again. But who knows? All right, next thing to talk about Spiral. All right, Spiral virtually didn't get hit on this list, and it's absolutely still good. I think it just has some inconsistencies, and a lot of people are choosing to main Ghost Ogre right now, rather over Droll Knockbird, which Ghost Ogre really hurts this deck in so many ways. Ogring Double Helix, Ogring Resort, and just stopping their plays. It's very vulnerable. It has it's pretty consistent, but it's just vulnerable, and it's not as good as it could be. It's not as consistent as it could be. So that's kind of why we have Spiral down here. But I think this deck is still good. You could do good with it at regionals. It's an extra link deck. So yeah. And then the last thing we actually have a picture of here is Heavy Metal Flows, Electromite, Pendulum Magicians, obviously. Pendulum Magicians or just Pendulum variants, I think the mechanic's busted, so I think this is always it's as long as there's some good cards there for them, it's going to be really 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 powerful. But I don't think it's losing Electromite to one is rough. I think we saw a few make it into top cut. I think there was like one in each region, maybe not in Europe. Um, but I think this deck's okay as a tier three deck. Um, that's all I really have to say. I don't really have much to say about this deck. I don't like talking about Pendulum. I'm not a fan of the mechanic, but I do think it's still powerful. Now, things I don't have here in here that are, I think, tier three would be like yeah, mekk-knight. Like any deck with mekk-knights is absolutely amazing. Mekk-knight cards are really good for going second when you get stuck going second. Um, Another thing I want to talk about is Cyber Dragon. There was actually a decent amount of Cyber Dragons at this event. I think there was like maybe one Cyber Dragon that top 60 forward in North America, but I feel like the other decks were a little bit better represented. I think there was since there was just a little bit. You can argue Paleo could take its place, but I think they're both kind of in the tier three. Cyber Dragon is super powerful deck, and just super good. It's just not as powerful as the other decks. Plus, too much interruptions just causes issues. Um, and then yeah, that's all I really have to say about for like any of the shoutouts. I don't think there's anything else. If I missed anything, I'm sorry, guys. But I think that's all I really have to say. I mean, who knows? Maybe Danger. Yeah, I think there was like a Danger Goki that topped. Really? I was just looking this up right now. The more listed Yeah, there's one danger Goki deck that topped, I guess. Who knows? So that was the only danger thing that really did anything. Who knows? I could be wrong about that too. Anyways, please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I'm going to have a video coming out later on, maybe next week, talking about side decking, and just what's going to be good to side deck for this format. Anyway, guys, like I said, please comment, like, subscribe. I'm outie. Later.